That's what it took to preserve its role in the primary system. I mean, it's already moved way back from where it used to be not all that long ago. We used to start this in February or March, and last time it was right at the beginning of the year. There were a lot of New Year's Eve parties in Des Moines the last time.
Is there an alternative universe, even if the campaign map doesn't change, the campaign calendar doesn't change? Is there an alternate political universe where, regardless of what people say they want Congress to work on right now, it makes sense for there to be this much abortion time in the U.S. House of Representatives this year?
Well, look, for people in the Right to Life movement, particularly for ardent folks in the Right to Life movement, there is no more important issue. It's a foundational issue for them, and any day is an appropriate day to bring up this question. And we are a country, after all, that loves to argue about moral issues. We were yelling at each other about prohibition during the Great Depression. And when I was thinking about this story today, it did bring to mind one of my favorite political stories. Democratic Party was riven between wet Democrats who were anti-prohibition and dry Democrats who were for it. And it's in the 30s, after the great crash, a Democrat out in Missouri wrote Jim Farley, FDR's main political guy, and said, I don't understand why wet Democrats are arguing with dry Democrats over alcohol when neither of them can afford the price of a drink. And I think what you got in this case, I think there are a lot of right-to-lifers out there who are going to look at this and say, wait a minute, jobs are still my priority. And I also think that from their point of view, looking at it from the point of view of folks who are against abortion, people are much less likely to have abortions, more likely to bring kids into the world when they have some economic security. So I guess 5 people out there can hear this and form a group called Right to Lifers for the Jobs Bill. But I think that they don't have an excuse now, although they're not going to do it, but to bring up the Jobs Bill if they can do all this other stuff.
You know, one of the things that strikes me, though, and I got at this a little bit in terms of the bill that the House Republicans are going to spend all day tomorrow working on in Congress, is that they've already passed this, essentially. I mean, it's a slightly different version of something they've already passed, but a lot of what they do, they even admit to being redundant and making no new law. It's stopping no actual abortions, it being something that only theoretically goes into effect if there's a future change in law. We've seen that in the states, too. States like Michigan, which actually has a few problems and has some stuff to be working on. In Michigan, they've just devoted a bunch of legislative time in their short legislative calendar to working on an abortion ban that will doubly, triply ban something that is already banned in Michigan and does not take place there. So all of this stuff none of this stuff really is about governing so much, or even the size of government, as it is so much being seen to be working on this issue. And I wonder if there's less of a cost to that for conservatives who don't really believe that government is a legitimate functioning institution anyway, than there would be for liberals working on something so symbolic.
Well, you know, I remember a politician who once said, you know, we're not really good at policy anymore, but we're really good at symbols, so we do a lot of symbols. And I think that, you know, this is a political thing. The Right to Life movement is an important component of the Republican coalition, and so they want to bring this issue up over and over again. What's ironic is that the Right to Lifers have been supporting Republicans since Roe v. Wade, and Roe v. Wade is still the law of the land. And the fact is that if Roe v. Wade fell, most states would actually adopt relatively permissive, if I can use that word, they'd keep abortion legal for a considerable period of time. So, yes, there is an awful lot of symbolism here. And the attack on Planned Parenthood, I think, is something disturbing even for Right to Lifers. You had on your show some months ago Steve Lynch of Massachusetts, who's a Right to Life Democrat. And he gave this great speech where he said, you know, if you defund Planned Parenthood, defund all their services for women, defund their family planning services, you're going to end up with more abortions, not fewer abortions. And I hope he's around again to make that speech again when this issue comes up.
EJ, one last question for you about sort of the distance between Republican politics and the way Republicans talk to each other and the decisions they make politically that may not make sense in the broader context. like this focus on abortion in the House. I wonder if there's also something to be read there in what Republicans have decided among their presidential candidates. I mean, right now, Herman Cain is leading nationally in today's NBC News Wall Street Journal poll and in the new PPP poll. That is seen largely by people outside of Republican politics as being if not a surprise, at least a little bit inexplicable. Should we see the fact that it seems surprising and inexplicable as a wake-up call that Republican politics are a little bit sequestered, kind of a self-contained universe right now that doesn't interact very much with the rest of mainstream American politics?
Maybe Michelle Bachmann was onto something last night when she suggested we turn 999 around and get this kind of bewitching number. I think what you really heard in the Republican debate, and also heard from the Republicans in the Senate when they blocked the jobs bill, is their ideology says that the way government solves problems is by being sure the government doesn't do anything about the problem. They have an ideological block now to government action. Barney Frank likes to talk about reverse Houdinis, people who tie themselves up into knots and then say, I can't do anything because I'm all tied up in knots. And I think that's where they are now.
Washington Post columnist E.J. Dionne, thank you very much.